The story begins with our protagonist, Daniel Park, being abused and pushed around by his bully, Logan Lee. Every day Daniel was forced to act as Logan's pet, as Logan ordered him to run his errands, make animal noises, and act as his personal punching bag. Daniel's classmates looked at him with pity, as they were relieved that they were not in his situation. Daniel hated his school life and wished that he could run away and transfer. At home, Daniel asked his mother again if he could transfer schools. Instead of telling her the real reason why, Daniel instead tried to convince his mother that he could get better grades if he were to transfer. But his mother declined his offer and told Daniel that she didn't have the money to afford him transferring schools, and that if he were to transfer, then he would be leaving behind all of his friends. This caused Daniel to have an outburst, and he takes out his anger on his mother, screaming at her and blaming her for his situation. Daniel quickly rushed to his room and cried himself to sleep, ashamed at himself for getting mad at his mother and for not having the courage to stand up for himself at school. The next afternoon during gym class, Daniel was forced to act as a test dummy, as Logan and May from the soccer team made a bet on who could hit Daniel with the soccer ball first. Logan went first, and at the last second, Daniel ducked and dodged the ball, irritating Logan. May went next and launched the soccer ball, sending it at terrifying speeds. Daniel tried to avoid it, but May knew that Daniel would duck, and he made sure to change the trajectory of the ball, causing it to curve and hit Daniel in the face, breaking his glasses. Although his face was in pain and his glasses were shattered, Daniel was more concerned about Logan. To make sure that there were no hard feelings, Daniel offered to give Logan his allowance to make up for Logan losing the bet. Unfortunately for Daniel, Logan did not take him up on his offer and instead took it as Daniel trying to pity him, and he began to beat up Daniel in front of the whole school. As he was getting beaten up from a distance, Daniel watched as his mother angrily ran to his rescue. Daniel's mother immediately came to his aid and made sure that he was okay, before directing all of her attention towards Logan. She scolded and swatted at Logan for hurting her son, calling him a thug and a bully. Daniel began to notice the other students looking at him and his mother, and began to feel even more embarrassed. Unable to take the embarrassment anymore, Daniel yelled at his mother to stop, and told her that she was embarrassing him. Daniel then apologized to Logan for his mother's actions, and told his mother to leave. That night after school, ashamed at how he treated his mother, Daniel tried to sneak into his house without his mother noticing him. But his mother was waiting for his arrival, and told him that they needed to talk. After changing his clothes, Daniel's mother sat him down and told him a transfer. She tells him that he will be living by himself and that she would take care of all of his expenses. These words of his mother caused Daniel to experience an influx of mixed feelings. Daniel did not want his mother to be alone, but he also knew that this was his only opportunity to escape Logan. He broke down into tears as he knew himself that he was just running away from his problems. A few days later, Daniel moved into his new house, ready and prepared to live a new life and to become a new person. Daniel went to his local barbershop to get a new haircut and change up his style, but it didn't work out as well as he imagined. While checking himself out, Daniel noticed a girl named Mira staring at him and thought that she was checking him out. Daniel misread the situation and almost got into it with her friend, Zach Lee, when he thinks that Daniel is hitting on Mira. Daniel nearly was about to walk away from the situation, but he was determined to be a new person in his new life. He decided to clear up the misunderstanding and offered to take Zach and Mira out for a cup of coffee. But unluckily for Daniel, Zach hated coffee, and he ended up beating up Daniel in front of everyone. A video was recorded of Daniel getting beaten up, and it goes trending on Facebook. Daniel cries and sniffles in the corner of his room as he saw his life returning to the way it was, and eventually Daniel cries himself to sleep. In the middle of the night, Daniel woke up to go pee, when he suddenly noticed an unfamiliar man in his mirror. Scared, Daniel stumbled back and fell back into his room, and to his surprise he saw himself still sleeping. Daniel immediately ran back to the bathroom and checked in the mirror to see if he was really awake. Strangely enough, he was awake and was in a new perfect tall and handsome body. Daniel tried to look up his situation online, but he was unsuccessful. He even thought about calling the police and his mother, but Daniel knew that calling the police would only make things worse, and that his mother already had enough to deal with. Daniel went back to his body and tried to wake himself up. In an instant, Daniel woke up, looking at the ceiling. He looked at himself and saw that he was back in his normal body. Coming to the conclusion that it was just a dream, Daniel made his way to the bathroom to pee. But to his surprise again, he saw the perfect body sleeping next to him, and realized that he really wasn't dreaming. By experimenting with his new body, Daniel discovered 4 things about his situation. Rule 1. His sleeping selves won't wake up by themselves. The body that he is currently using must fall asleep first in order to switch bodies. Rule 2. If he forces one of his bodies to wake up, the other body will automatically fall asleep. Rule 3. The sleeping body feels hunger and needs to use the bathroom to stay alive, so he must remain conscious of how long he spends on each body and maintain a good sleep schedule. Rule 4. His consciousness is active 24/7. Days passed, and Daniel's first day at his new school was around the corner. So as a test run, Daniel decided to go to school in his new body. Unlike his old school, everyone there treated him nicely. All the girls swooned over him, and all the bullies respected him. Even the guy from before, Zach, did not beat him up. To help maintain his sleep schedule and to make some extra money, Daniel picked up a job working night shift at a convenience store. One night while working, Daniel gets a visit from the bullies in his class and Zach. They try to buy cigarettes and alcohol, but Daniel told them that he could not sell it to them without a proper ID. As a result, Daniel was beaten up by Zach and then blackmailed by the bullies. Daniel went back to school the next day, and the same people who were beating him up last night were making fun of him in class. Daniel did not mind them making fun of him, but when they started insulting his mother, Daniel confronted the bullies and told them that they were taking it too far. Zach thought that Daniel was trying to act cool in front of Mira, so he challenged Daniel to a fight in front of the whole class. Before Zach could attempt to fight Daniel, another student from their class named Jae Hong interfered and tried to stop Zach from fighting Daniel. But Zach broke out of Jae's grasp and proceeded to throw a punch at Daniel. As usual, Daniel prepared to get hit. When it came to getting a beating, Daniel was an expert at it. So much so that after a while he became able to see the punches coming, as if they were moving in slow motion. But due to his fat and overweight body, Daniel was never fit or fast enough to move out of the way until now. Everyone, including Daniel, was surprised to see that he had dodged Zach, the boxing genius's punch. Zach threw a barrage of punches at Daniel, but none of them were landing. Daniel either dodged or blocked Zach's punches. Daniel thought back to all the times he was bullied and about Logan. As soon as Zach threw a punch at him, Daniel weaved out of the way of the punch and then punched Zach right in his solar plexus, knocking Zach down. The classroom looked in amazement as they watched Zach gasping for air and Daniel standing over him, and soon rumors of the fight began to spread around school. That night, Daniel recollected about how he defeated Zach, and he wondered about how people would react if he had beaten Zach in his original body. He knew that people would just judge him negatively based on his appearance, just like the customers at his store. While he was free, Daniel decided to get a quick workout in to shed a few pounds, when suddenly a beautiful girl entered the store while Daniel was in the middle of his push-ups. Daniel assumed that the girl would be disgusted and turned off by seeing him, but instead the girl was nice and complimented him for working out. She even bought him an energy drink for him on her way out. Not long after, a high schooler named Ji-ho walked into the store. Looking at his demeanor and frame, Daniel assumed that he was a loser just like him. Out of nowhere, Ji-ho grabbed a phone charger and ran out of the store at full speed. Daniel chased after him and luckily Ji-ho tripped, allowing Daniel to catch up to him. Daniel soon realized that the bullies from his class had ordered Ji-ho to rob the store. With 2 losers right in front of them, the bullies made Daniel and Ji-ho fight each other and told them that the winner would have their nude picture deleted. Ji-ho immediately began to punch and attack Daniel desperately. Knowing Ji-ho's situation, Daniel decided to let him win and took his punches. But luckily for the 2 of them, another high schooler named Vasco took down the bullies and stopped their fight. During lunch the next day, Daniel invited Ji-ho to sit with him and tries to become his friend. Daniel even tries to invite Vasco to eat with him, but it doesn't go as planned. Seeing Ji-ho next to Daniel, Vasco assumed that Daniel was bullying Ji-ho and making him his pet. He confronts Daniel and tries to use his legendary squeeze of death to make Daniel concede to him. But Daniel effortlessly made Vasco unhand him and tried to clear up the misunderstanding. However, Vasco had no intentions of talking it out, and a fight nearly broke out between him and Daniel. Luckily, Vasco's right-hand man, Jace, de-escalated the entire situation and took Vasco away. Later during class, Daniel was invited out by the bullies. They told him that they should get acquainted with each other, since they were friends. Since he's never had friends before, Daniel was quick to accept their proposal and agreed to meet with them. That evening, Daniel went to meet with his classmates, but he was taken aback when he found out that the get-together was at an adult restaurant. He found the bullies, Zach and a girl from his class named Zoe, smoking and drinking alcohol. Even though he didn't feel comfortable being at an adult restaurant, he didn't want his friends to think that he was uncool. The group hung out and found out more about Daniel. Zach got drunk and Daniel also accidentally drank some alcohol. The group was having fun, but not too far away, another table full of seniors was making passive-aggressive remarks at Daniel's and his classmates' table. The bullies and Zoe started sending slick remarks back, and a fight nearly broke out between the two tables. But Daniel quickly intimidated the seniors and scared them off. Not long after the seniors left the restaurant, the alcohol caught up to Daniel and he eventually passed out. This caused Daniel to wake up in his other body back at his house. Daniel tried to go back to sleep and switch bodies, but for some reason, even after he fell asleep, he could not switch bodies. Worried that his new body may have disappeared, Daniel quickly ran over to the restaurant. Daniel arrived at the restaurant and was glad to see that his body was still intact. Daniel began to bring his body back home, but Zach stopped him and told him that he wanted to show him something. Daniel, Zach, and their classmates went to a nearby arcade, and Zach showed Daniel how to throw a proper straight punch on the punch game machine. Before heading home, Daniel tried to perform the straight punch himself, but unfortunately he missed the target. Embarrassed, Daniel quickly grabbed his body and went home. Unbeknownst to Daniel, Vasco happened to go by the arcade, and he noticed the tear that Daniel left on the punch machine. From this experience, Daniel learned another fact about his body, that in a state of lost consciousness, Daniel cannot switch bodies until his body has recovered and regained consciousness. One day after school, Daniel got a surprise visit from his mother. To avoid suspicions, Daniel quickly introduced himself as Daniel's friend, and he took his mother out for coffee. While out with his mother, Daniel realized how much his mother cared for him and how much he had been neglecting her. Before heading back home, Daniel's mother gave him 5,000 won and told Daniel to take care of her son and treat him well. After seeing his mom off, Daniel was approached by Vasco and was challenged to a fight. For some reason, Vasco believed that Daniel was a bully and that he was bullying little Daniel. After seeing Daniel take the money from his mother, Vasco believed that Daniel was not only taking money from little Daniel, but from his mother as well. Daniel tried to clear up the misunderstanding and explain to Vasco what really happened. But Vasco would not listen to him, and he immediately tried to take Daniel's head off. Daniel begged Vasco to stop and to listen as he barely dodged his punches. Vasco stopped for a brief moment and told Daniel that he would end their fight if Daniel handed over the 5,000 won his mother gave to him. Knowing the hard work that his mother had to go through to make that money, Daniel refused and immediately took up a boxing stance. He used what he learned from Zach and he goes in for a straight right. Vasco answers back with his very own straight, and it seemed as if Vasco would reach Daniel first. But the last second, Daniel turned his head and his entire body, dodging the punch, and he hit Vasco with a backspin elbow, knocking Vasco out. Days later during lunch, Daniel saw a loser like him, named Duke, getting bullied by the vocal department bully Vin Jin. Daniel decided to invite Duke over to have lunch with him and Jiho. Vin Jin and the rest of the students noticed this, and Vin Jin tried to get Duke to come back to him. He threw a cup at Duke and told him to get him some water, but before Duke could move, Vasco and Zach both stood up to Vin Jin and stopped him from bossing Duke around. Vin Jin ended up leaving in frustration. While cleaning his classroom before heading home, Daniel remembered when the girls at lunch asked him if he was going to perform at their annual festival. Daniel had always been alone as a loser, and to help him feel less sad and alone, he would sing to himself. But Daniel couldn't imagine singing in front of a crowd. After checking if he was alone, Daniel decided to sing to himself. However, he wasn't alone, and Duke had overheard him singing. Acknowledging that Daniel had a nice voice, Duke asked Daniel to team up with him and perform together at the festival. Daniel went over to Duke's house, and together they prepared for their performance. By rehearsing with Duke, Daniel learned a lot about Duke and learned that he came from a similar background. But unlike Daniel, Duke did not let his shortcomings stop him from accomplishing his dreams. Duke worked hard and always faced his problems head-on, unlike Daniel, who had always run away from them. To speed up his vocal training, Daniel practiced during his shifts. Again, Daniel was caught off guard, and he got an unexpected visit from the beautiful girl from before. Again, she complimented his work ethic, and she bought him an energy drink, telling him to keep up the hard work. Later that night, Daniel was also visited by Jiho and Duke, and Jiho apologized to Daniel for the incident before and for fighting him. The three of them sat together and they shared their experiences as losers. Both Jiho and Duke agreed that although their life wasn't perfect, Daniel had made their school life a lot better by bringing them into his group. While they were talking, Vasco overheard their discussion and asked if it was true that Daniel was not the bully that he thought he was. Duke and Jiho both confirmed that Daniel was not a bully, and Vasco just stood there, ashamed of his actions. Before leaving, Vasco told Daniel that he was not as weak as he thought he was, and that if he took the time to work out, then Daniel would be able to see his true potential. The day of the festival eventually arrived, and Daniel and his friends enjoyed the festival by eating an assortment of foods and participating in the different events. The first event was the fashion show, where the fashion department showcased their skills in clothing, followed by the charity date auction, where the female students could auction for a chance at a date with their favorite boy crushes in each department. Daniel's turn eventually came, and immediately the girls at the school began to go crazy. The main two buyers were Zoe and Lala Kim, the auction queen. Zoe tried to compete with Lala, but Lala's bids were too large for her to handle, and it seemed as if Daniel would be bought by Lala. That was until another contestant joined the bargain and made another ridiculous offer for Daniel. The mystery girl from the convenience store swooped in and managed to win the auction and get Daniel. After the auction, Daniel tried to thank the girl for winning him and saving him from Lala. But this rubbed the girl the wrong way, and she scolded Daniel. She told him not to be so arrogant just because he was handsome. Daniel realized that what he had said was wrong and that he was becoming superficial because of his body. He tried to apologize and clear things up with the girl, but he was stopped by her bodyguard, Gun. Daniel broke out of Gun's grip and persisted on talking to the girl, but Gun followed up with a roundhouse kick. Daniel tried to block his kick, but Gun noticed this and swiftly changed the trajectory of his kick and knocked down Daniel. Vasco saw everything and came to Daniel's rescue, telling Gun to leave his friend alone and to face him. Gun took Vasco up on his offer, and without hesitation, he hit Vasco with a straight right. Surprisingly to everyone, Vasco was still standing, and he told Gun to take off his glasses. Gun took off his glasses, getting serious, pointing out that Daniel and Vasco were very interesting. But before the fight could continue, the girl immediately jumped in and convinced Gun to stop and to just leave them alone. Gun agreed and apologized to Daniel and Vasco for taking it too far, before escorting the girl away and leaving the two behind. As soon as Gun and the girl left, Vasco immediately collapsed. Vasco told Daniel that if they were to fight again, he was confident that he could beat Daniel. But if he were to fight Gun again, he did not know if he could beat him, calling Gun a monster. Daniel thanked Vasco for helping him, and the two of them enjoyed a milk cartoon together, signifying the start of their new friendship. They went back to the festival, just in time for the concert. It was finally time for Daniel and Duke to perform, and the two of them made their way on stage. As they walked on stage, the crowd cheered as they saw Daniel, but they ridiculed and made fun of Duke as he accompanied Daniel on stage. After finally reaching the center of the stage, Daniel began to grow nervous as he stared at the gigantic crowd in front of him. He tried to sing, but he was so nervous that it caused him to hit the wrong notes. Daniel worried that he would mess up and waste all the hard work that Duke had put into their performance. But Duke comforted Daniel and told him not to worry. Daniel remembered the advice that Duke gave him for when he was nervous, and Daniel immediately thought about singing to the person he loved the most. With his mother in mind, Daniel and Duke gave their best performance. When they were done, the crowd erupted in cheers as they applauded Daniel and Duke for their performance. Even the individuals that taunted Duke before complimented his rapping ability and even commented that he was way better than Bin Jin. Daniel was glad to see that Duke was finally getting the recognition that he deserved. Even the OK talent scouter apologized to Duke and acknowledged that he had talent, as he handed out his card with his direct line number. But he was not handing it to Duke. Instead, he was handing it to Daniel and offered him a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity as a singer. That concludes part 1 of Daniel Park's life. If you would like a part 2, get this video up to 100 likes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and to turn on notifications for more videos on your favorite webtoons and manhwa. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.